Oh hey guys, top of the morning to ya. It's me, Sean Astrom, and today I am super excited and also pumped up because I have two new products that are available on my website, one of which is called Epic Sunsets CG HDRI and the other is called Alien Skies CG HDRI. Each one of these HDRI packs comes with 10 14K HDRI maps that you can use to illuminate your 3D scenes in any 3D package with any render engine. And I'm going to show you guys what they're all about right now in Cinema 4D using Corona Renderer. Let's check it out. Hey guys, so here we are in Cinema 4D, but first I'm going to hop over to my web browser and take you guys to my website here. You can go to seanastrom.com/CGHDRI, and that will take you to this page here where I have these two new sky products that I want to show you guys. We have the Epic Sunsets here and the Alien Skies, and if you dive into these guys, you can read all about them and find out what they're all about in a little more detail here on my site. But essentially they're 10 packs. They're going to be themed 10 packs. I'm going to have more themes coming out soon, but I wanted to start out with these guys. You can kind of see I did a bunch of renderings to kind of showcase what you're able to do with just these image-based lighting maps. And you can kind of see here a few of these images I created. I feel like they turned out pretty cool. And then if we go over here, we can check out the Alien Skies. And this one is pretty unique. I feel like there isn't much of its kind out there. A couple of these HDRI images actually have multiple suns, which turned out pretty cool. You can see on this guy here, there's multiple shadows actually casting. And then this one as well has two bright suns. And then on top of including the 10 custom-made HDRI maps at 14,000 by 7,000 resolution, I've also got these free star maps that I kind of threw into the pack so that you can map in these stars. And I'll show you guys how we can do that here. I have one here, kind of the trying to do kind of like the Aurora Borealis there, and you can kind of see how that turned out, and a couple of these renderings. And yeah, so I'm super excited about these guys, and I'm going to dive into Cinema here and show you what they're all about. So if we hop into Cinema here, and I'm going to make sure my render is set to Corona. Got that set up here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is throw in a disk object, and I'm going to kind of actually place some trees on this object here so that we can get something kind of cool to look at. Just scale this up, make it editable for now, just because I'm going to be a little lazy with this. I'm going to get rid of that center chunk there. And what I'm going to do actually is bring in a tree from this awesome little tree kit. Now you can get some of these online. There's a demo that gives you some of these freebies, and I'm going to use one of these guys so that it's just a really nice looking tree, and it renders really quick and all that stuff. So I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to scale up this disk even more, and I want to kind of try and place these trees on this disk here. I'm going to just make this a little bit bigger here, and I'm just going to grab a cloner here, throw my tree into this cloner, set my cloner to object mode. I'm going to make the object this here disk, and by default it is set to vertex. We're actually going to set that to surface, and here we can adjust the count. And if I go to my cloner here and check render instances, we want to go ahead and do that. And then I need to go to my transform here and rotate these trees 90 degrees so they are up facing, standing up correctly there. And I think I will go to my effector menu, add a random effector, and we don't want to randomize the Y position, but we definitely want to randomize the scale a little bit and the rotation. We can do like 360 here and 1 and 1, and I think that will work pretty good for this little demonstration. So I have these trees here in the center of this world here, and what I need to do is bring in one of my HDRI maps. So for that, I'm just going to, real quick, I'm going to create a new layer here. Let's call this trees mats, and just to keep my scene a little cleaner, I'll just throw these guys on here, make it green, and then if I go over here, I can create a new HDRI material. So we'll just call this CG HDRI, and then I'm going to load in one of my maps here. So just under the emission tab here, we're going to go here and go load image, and I'm going to go here and let's hop into, sorry guys, got a bunch of files in there, promo video. Here we go. Let's see here. I'm going to start off with this Epic Sunset 01. I got this kind of preset up here. Now there's a slight bug with the latest beta 2 of Corona here that I'm using, where the materials are kind of rotated incorrectly. So I'm just going to rotate this by right-clicking in the preview window here, and I can just rotate that so it's more correctly oriented. Now if I just take this guy and plop it onto nothing that I have here in my object manager, we need to add a sky object, and I got that there, and boom. Next thing I need to do is bring in a camera, and let's set this camera up to be super wide angle, like 15 is always kind of nice. And you can see here that we get a little bit of a preview here, and it's an ugly preview because we need to go to the viewport preview size and crank that up to a little higher number. And just like that, guys, you can see kind of what we're getting. Now, I'm going to just do a quick preview here. Now, I'm going to actually hide this disk because I was really just using that as a cloner placement object. And so I'll bring in a big plane here, and I'm going to actually make this even larger, 20,000, so it kind of goes off into the distance. One really nice thing about these maps is they have kind of an infinite horizon line. They do not have any just cutoffs or buildings or trees right at the horizon line like most photographically captured HDRIs, and that's kind of one of the really nice things about these. Is you don't have to worry about hiding all that junk in the background. But I'm going to go ahead and fire up Corona here. And before I do that, I think instead of using the Corona interactive renderer right here, I'm going to actually use Magic Preview because these Lobrecht trees don't fully load within the interactive renderer currently. I'm sure that might be something they fix here in the near future. So go ahead and fire that guy up here, and let's see what we get here. Rendering, rendering, rendering. Okay, and right off the bat there, you guys can see that we're getting some nice lighting, and I'm going to add a Corona camera tag, and I'm going to just bump up the exposure by a couple stops and see if we can't brighten up the scene a little bit. Now, these trees are definitely heavily detailed. In fact, it's at render time swapping over to the tree geometry, and as you can kind of see here in my little preview that the trees are very dense. That's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to use one of these objects is because it just looks awesome and you get a lot of detail in here. So as you can see, guys, we're already getting some really nice lighting. We are getting some awesome shadows casting from these trees, and that's all looking well and good. So I'm going to stop this and go into my tree materials here, and I'm going to shift select these actual petals here, and same little trick. I'm going to right click here in the material preview window and just kind of rotate these guys so they're kind of facing the right direction, and that's just a little bug, nothing to worry about. And with all these selected, if I go over to the translucency tab and turn that on, I'm going to add in some translucency to these leaves, and by default the fraction set to 50% is pretty good. I might crank it up a little bit, and then I'm just going to add in like a generic green color here for the translucency, just for this demonstration here. And I'm going to go ahead and fire that up here again, let that calculate. Take a sip of this beverage here. And you can see we're getting a nice little preview going, and already those trees are looking even better. Now if I just brighten this up a little bit more and maybe make that a little higher, we'll get a little bit more of a translucent leaf, and that might look a little nicer. So with these skies, each map ships with an alpha channel for the clouds, and we can do several things with that. If you check out some of my older videos, I show how you can cast cloud shadows with these, but it's very dependent on the sun angle. And for this Epic Sunsets pack, the cloud shadow effect isn't very apparent because the sun is too low to be casting any really hard, nice shadows from the clouds. So instead of showing you guys how that works, because you can check that out in my other videos, I'm going to show you guys how we can place some planets behind the clouds if we hop over to some of the alien sky maps here, which I'm going to do right now. So if I hop over to my HDRI here, I'm going to just make a copy of this, and we'll do this number 2, and I'm going to load up this Alien Sky 7, and that's the alpha there. I'm going to load up the actual HDRI here, which is this EXR file. Load that up. Now another quick thing I will show you guys is if you purchase these, they come with a manual, essentially like a reference guide, where you can load, just pull this PDF up and check out all the different skies and reference them really quickly that way. Of course, you could load them up into the content browser, or you could even probably make them compatible with HDRI Link, that Grayscale Gorilla plugin. You know, there's various ways of loading them in, but I kind of like this reference guide. It's just really easy for me to pull this up, see how the lighting looks, and pick and choose the map I want to use for whatever particular project I'm working on. So we got that guy loaded up here, and I'm going to plop that on my sky, and you can kind of see the preview we're getting there. Now this particular map is actually got 2 suns in it, so we have a sun over here setting and a brighter sun over there, so that's pretty cool. Now the way I'm going to do the planets here is pretty cool. I'm going to actually create a new scene, and I'm going to bring in a sphere, and let's check out the wireframe on this, and I think that looks pretty good. And we'll just call this Planet 1, and we'll do Planet 2. Now I'm just going to create a standard Cinema 4D material. Under color here, I'm going to load in a texture. Now I just pulled these off the web. You guys can find these textures all over the place. You can get Mars and Jupiter, and that's what I have here, and they're all over the internet, so you can find this stuff pretty easily. So here I have my 2 planets, and I'm just going to scale these up, and I'm going to bring in a camera and hop in the camera here, and I'm going to I just set the camera here in world position 000, zeroed everything out there. And if I go to the spherical tab here on the camera, I can enable the spherical camera, and all of these default settings are what we want. And if I fire up my magic preview here, you can see that we are inside of Mars. That's not quite what we want, so I'm going to bring this guy out here. Now this is what we're trying to do here. So all we got to do really is just position these planets in kind of a cool way. And you can see the spherical mapping that we're getting from the camera. And this is pretty much what we want to do so that we can create a custom map that we can blend with the HDRI file that I have loaded up in my other project. So I'm just going to make a couple quick copies of these, rotate this guy around, and let's do one more Jupiter because that looks pretty cool. And that's looking kind of cool. Now we're getting kind of the default lighting right now in Cinema to illuminate these planets, which probably works fine for this quick demo here, but obviously you could get in there and spend a little more time getting that to look really cool. I'm going to make this one nice and huge. Let's see if we can't get like a cool kind of highlight going on here off to the side. And yeah, I think for this particular demo, I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to hop into my render settings and let's just save out a 2K map. Nothing too fancy for right now. And you know what? Let's make it 3K. Let's do, that looks good. And we'll just save this out here into my little demo folder. And let's just call this planets map. And we'll go 16-bit TIFF. No need for an alpha channel, and I'll show you guys here. And I'll pause the Magic Preview and let's just render this out real quick. Boom, that's how long that took. Now if I hop over to my, I better save this real quick. We will call this planets. I'm going to hop over to my other project here. And all we need to do is go into this HDRI file, and under the emission tab here, under the texture, we are going to pop this into a layer shader, and inside of here we are going to, you guessed it, bring in that planet map. And so now we have that planet map with the proper spherical projection, and you can already kind of see what we're getting in our viewport here, which is looking pretty cool. And we need to set this to add, and we're not going to be able to see that. Whoa, look at that. We are going to be able to see that in the viewport. That is pretty cool. I did not realize that that worked. That's great. So this is looking pretty cool. We got our planets off there floating in the sky. Now all we need to do is bring in one more map, and that is this sky alpha. If I bring this in here and place it below the planet map, I can set this to layer mask. And this works just like in Photoshop, which is really great. And Corona Render supports all of Cinema's native features, so all of this stuff works with Corona, which is fantastic. And if I just hop into the actual texture here by clicking it, we do need to invert the map in this particular case. So I'm going to actually invert these numbers, black point to 1 and white point to 0. And just from doing a little bit of testing, I know that I can increase the contrast here, and just like that, you can see in the preview here that I'm now getting these planets behind the clouds, and that's kind of what I'm going for. And I'm going to set up another nice little camera angle here. That looks pretty good. And then let's go to our cloner object and change the seed value on these guys. See if we can't get something a little more interesting, I guess not intersecting as much. And I'm going to actually see if I can't scale these guys down. Oops. I believe with these guys here, it uses the document scale, so I can actually do this here. And I'm liking that a little better. And that was a neat sound. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. I'm going to angle up my camera a little bit. Boom, just like that. I'm going to go to my render settings and crank up the output a little bit. I'm going to render to picture viewer in this particular case because I want to see if we can't get something kind of cool looking going here. And we'll let that do its magic calculating. And just like that, you guys can see we're getting some pretty darn cool little lighting. I'm going to go to post-processing here, dock this guy over here. And remember, the exposure on our camera was set to 2, and I'm going to drop that back down to 0. And you can kind of see what we're getting there. We got Mars here in the background behind this cloud. We got Jupiter up there. Pretty awesome stuff. Now, the planets are a little saturated for right now. And I could go into Photoshop and do that, or you know what, maybe I could do that real quick in Cinema. So I'm going to stop that guy, hop back into my map, and let's see here. If I select this guy, right click and go to filter shader, it's going to drop that into a filter, and here I can desaturate it a little bit. That's probably good. I'm going to hop up a level, and if I actually lower the opacity on this guy, we should get something that looks a little nicer here. And let's just let this do its pre-calculating. Now, part of the reason it's taken a few seconds to pre-calculate is those trees at render time are very dense. Alrighty guys, so that's kind of the effect we got going here. Looking pretty good. If I again pull up my post-processing here, I could bump up the exposure a little bit. See, we got some nice hard shadows going on here. These trees are looking pretty sweet. Got the planets in the sky looking pretty good. Obviously, if you spend a little more time with this particular setup, you could get some really nice looking renders relatively fast. In fact, extremely fast if you know what you're doing. So we got the bloom intensity here cranked up. We get some nice highlights on the actual suns. And yeah, guys, so this is how we can utilize those alpha channels to put objects behind the clouds. These could be planets, airplanes, birds. I think you guys kind of get the idea. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And last but not least, guys, I'm going to show you guys real quick here how we can bring in those star maps. Same kind of thing. So I duplicated this HDRI, hopped into here, and I'm going to replace this bitmap here with Alien Sky 9, and then I'm going to hop up a level and let's replace that alpha with Alien Sky 9 Alpha right there. And this one I may need to increase the contrast a little bit more, and you can kind of see here if I right click and go open window, you can get a nice little preview here of what I've done with the alpha here. I've just inverted it and increased the contrast by playing around with these black point and white point values. If I hop up a level here, that seems to actually be working, and I may even leave the planets in here, because why not? And then I'm just going to hop over into, here I have the whole pack here. I'm just going to load in one of these star maps, and these stars are pretty cool in that they're rendered correctly with constellations and genuine placement. All the stars are in the correct spot, at least from our point of view here on planet Earth. But if we just go here and set this to add, and I'm going to put this underneath the rest of this stuff here, we should get something going here. And actually, I'm going to turn off the planets. I'm going to put this above the alpha here because I want these stars to be occluded a little bit by the clouds or aurora borealis here that we got going on in this particular map. I'm going to plop this guy onto here, and just like that, you guys can see kind of in the viewport what we're getting. I'm going to fire up another render, and we should have something that's looking pretty cool here. Calculate, and again, it's these trees just taking longer, but I wanted to put something somewhat interesting into these scenes. So you can see here that the stars are actually mapped behind the aurora clouds, or light streams, or whatever you want to call them. And of course, we're getting a pretty dark scene here because it's a pretty dark HDRI, but it still works in illuminating the entire scene. If I just overexpose this here a little bit, you can kind of see what we're getting. I can play around with some of these settings here to kind of tweak the look of this whole thing. Maybe throw on a nice Canon LUT. And yeah, guys, you guys can play with this stuff all day long, I'm sure. But essentially, this is how these maps work. And again, you can hop over to my site, seanastrom.com/CGHDRI, and you can kind of see some of the renders on here that I spent a little more time with. Turned out pretty great, if I don't say so myself. And yeah, guys, so hope you guys dug this video, maybe learned a little bit about how to properly set up these maps. I'm gonna go ahead and stop this. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next video real soon.